Hey folks, I'm Pete. We're doing Pete's Eats Cooking videos. Today I've got a really special treat. We're gonna make chili. Now, chili is one of those things, some people like it hot, some people like it sweet, some people like it with beans, some people don't like it with beans. But I'm gonna give you my basic chili recipe, and of course you can take it any way you want. Recently I made a huge batch of this chili, and everyone really enjoyed it. I had so many requests for recipes, I thought, we gotta get this up. So here we go. So here's what you're gonna need to make the chili. The big three are ground beef, bell peppers, and onions. That's the vast majority of it. With respect to the ground beef, you can buy any type of ground beef you want. Lean, regular, extra lean, it doesn't matter, because we're going to render out the fat and we'll control our fat content with our own oil, olive oil. Bell peppers, you can use green, you can use red, you can use all the different colors you want, but you'll need about the same volume of red peppers as meat. And onions the same. Get nice big onions, it'll be easier to chop. And you'll need about the same volume of onions chopped as meat. Moving on, for the heat, actually I'm not going to say the heat, the warmth, you're going to need jalapeno peppers, and about 1 per pound. I do not use the jalapeno peppers to create heat, just to create a nice warmth. You'll need garlic, quite a bit of garlic. You'll need tomatoes. Now my favorite is using diced canned tomatoes and kind of pureeing them right in the can before that I drop them in. You can use the already pureed tomatoes that come in these nice jars nowadays, and you can use, of course, the crushed tomatoes. I don't really like these that much. They're a little bit too starchy, sort of too thick. Also, with respect to the spices, you need some heat ingredients. I like Frank's Red Hot and chili peppers. These are the two ways I control the heat level in the chili. Now here's an ingredient you won't normally see, cocoa. I use cocoa powder, just not hot chocolate, but cocoa, pure cocoa powder, and about 1 good heaping teaspoon per pound. Also, you'll need chili powder and paprika, salt, pepper, vinegar to control the sour level of it. Of course, you can use any vinegar you want. I like just plain old white vinegar. I also like a sweet chili, so I add sugar. You can use brown sugar, corn syrup, whatever you want. And I also use ketchup. I give a little bit of ketchup in the mix. It just gives it a nice tangy, sweet flavor. So, all these ingredients will be in the bottom bar below. There's quite a few of them, so follow along. Let's begin! So here we go. I've got, for today's batch, about 2 kilograms or 4.5 pounds of beef, ground beef. And what I'm going to do is I've got it in the pot here, and I'm going to put a nice considerable amount of oil in there so it doesn't burn up. And let's just get that going on a medium heat, not too high. And then I slowly want to get this meat done to a point where it's no longer pink. When we achieve that, I'm going to pour out all the fat. So let's begin. I'm just going to cover that up, and if need be, you could add a little water in there if you want, but just not too high. Okay, let's check on this. It's starting to come along nicely. Now, I like to use a big masher just to make sure I don't get big hunks. You definitely don't want to really brown this meat. You just want to get rid of the redness, all of the redness. So I'm just going to mix it around. Nice and slow, let it render out all that fat, and that's it. We'll let it keep going. So let's take a look. Yeah, that's perfect. See all that fat in there? We're going to pour that right out now. Now I'm going to do that in the sink, and I'm going to use a sieve under it because it could slip. It has happened, so I don't want it to pour into the sink. You'll see. Okay, let's see if we can pour this out. All that fat is coming right out. And I'm doing a great job here. No pieces of beef have fallen through yet. Okay, that's good enough. I always use real garlic. I never use garlic powder in my chili, so I got to get these cloves of garlic prepared to be crushed with the crusher. So cut this end off. Just a tiny bit of the other end off. Give it just a bit of a squish, and then the skin will come off the skin will come off really, really nicely. For today's batch, we've got about 4.5 pounds of ground beef, so I would do approximately 1 clove of garlic per pound. On the stove on really low heat, and what I want to do now, first thing I want to do is get this garlic into the meat. Again, about 1 clove of garlic per pound, but I'm going to do a lot more because I like it that way. Okay, so I've got the garlic crushed in here, and I've got the stove on really low heat now. And what I want to do is now I have to return some fat in. So I'm going to put a bunch of olive oil in here to make sure it's going to fry up nicely. Now the olive oil is a good oil, so I can be liberal with that. I probably put between probably about a quarter of a cup of olive oil in there. And I've got the garlic in there and the meat. That's all I have, the garlic and the meat. And so now I'm going to turn it up just a bit to sort of a medium heat. And the first thing I'm going to add is my salt and my pepper. I would say probably a good 2 teaspoons, a teaspoon and a half of salt, or you can hold back maybe just about a teaspoon because we're going to adjust the flavors later. And also pepper. I like a lot of pepper, so I'm going to put about a good teaspoon of pepper in there, maybe even a teaspoon and a half. And here's where my process is a little bit different than most. I'm going to let this sort of heat up for a bit. And then I'm going to add the onions and the peppers and the rest of the spices. So let's give this a couple minutes just the way it is. Okay, I've got about 4.5 to 5 diced onions that I put in, and I'll let that just kind of soften up. And I've also got about the same amount of peppers. So we'll put those peppers in there, they're all diced. And I'm going to let that just warm up. I'll stir it up a bit and I'll let it warm up, and then we'll add the spices. Okay, this is nicely simmering there, but I want to add a little bit more liquid so it steams up. You could add water if you want, but I happen to have a couple of bottles of wine that aren't finished. They've been around for a couple of days, and that's absolutely fine. So I'm just going to pour that wine in there. It's a red wine. You could do white wine. It's not new. These are old bottles that have just been sitting around, and that'll let it steam up a bit. It's sort of somewhere on the vinegar scale. I'm a little bit worried I put too much stuff in this pot. So what I'm going to do is once I get everything in here, I'm going to separate some of it out into a smaller pot, and that will be my hot chili. I'll do a real hot one in there. So we'll have 2 types. We'll have sort of a normal one and a hot one. So all's good. It'll be fun. So we're going to add the jalapenos soon, and what I want to do is I want to clean them, and I want to take out all the fiery heat. So I'm going to chop the end of the jalapeno off, and then I'm going to cut it lengthwise like that. So you have these 2 kind of boats. And then what I need to do is I'm going to take a spoon, and I'm going to run a little spoon from the tip down to the bottom so that I sort of scrape out all of the seeds. There we go. But not only do I want to get all the seeds, I want to get all of this ribbing out of there, because that's the nasty heat, the ribbing and the seeds. And now that's a nice clean jalapeno, half jalapeno, and that's ready to be chopped up and thrown in the chili. So. Okay, I've taken out about a quarter to a third of the chili and separated it into a second pot so that we can add the flavoring. So I'm going to add the jalapeno peppers. So I'll put about 2/3 in there and 1/3 in there. Then I'm going to add the chili powder. I'll do about, maybe 3 tablespoons in the big pot, 2 tablespoons in the small pot. Actually, I'm going to put 1 more in here. So those are tablespoons. Next, I'm going to add paprika. So I'm going to add a good, healthy tablespoon there, and also a big tablespoon there. Next, I'm going to add the cocoa. So I'm going to add a tablespoon, actually 1, 2, 3 tablespoons of cocoa in the big one, and 1.5 tablespoons of cocoa in the smaller one. Now vinegar, about 1, 2, maybe 3 tablespoons in the big one, 2 tablespoons in the small one. All of these are going to be adjusted in the end. The Frank's Red Hot, I'm going to add, a bunch of really good squirts. I don't know how to say that, but we'll try and cover the surface in one kind of layer of squirts there. And this one the same thing. Here are the chili flakes. Now these chili flakes will make a huge difference in terms of the heat. So you want to be careful with these. You can't take these out once you put them in. So I'm going to put about a good teaspoon in the large one. And because this one's going to be hotter, a good teaspoon in that one. You want to be very careful with the chili flakes. And lastly, sugar. In the large one, I'm going to add about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 heaping teaspoons of sugar in the big one, 4 heaping teaspoons of sugar in the small one. I'm going to give that a stir, and I'm going to let that stay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let all these flavors melt together before I put in the tomatoes. So let's let all those flavors come together, and then we'll put in the tomato. Okay, the tomatoes that I like to use are the diced tomatoes. And so what I do is I get a can and I'll just pour out all the liquid as much as I can. And then I'm left with the diced tomatoes, and then I just try and carefully, without it going all over the kitchen, puree it with a brine processor. But you can do this anyway. Of course you can just buy the already pureed tomatoes, but I seem to like these ones in the can better because they have the seeds and they have a little bit more sort of fiber to them, a little bit more structure. And there you go, that's ready now to be poured right into the chili. These flavors have really now come together. You can see how rich and brown that looks and really excellent. So now I'm going to add the tomatoes. So these are the pureed tomatoes out of the can. I'm doing 1 large 28-ounce can into that. We'll put a second large 28-ounce can into that. Into the smaller batch here, I'll put 1 large 28-ounce can. And also the original juice out of the can that I took out. We'll add that as well. Now at this point, I also add ketchup. I think ketchup gives it a really nice, so I'll put about a 1/4 cup of ketchup in the first one. Gives it a really nice tangy flavor. And probably about half of that, about 1/8 of a cup in this one. Of course you can adjust this any way you want, up or down. Let's give it a stir, and I want to see really how tomatoey it seems. Yeah, it's okay. You know what, I think I might add some of that puree tomato. No, I definitely need to put some more tomatoes. I'm going to open up that puree jar. In total, this will be about 4 28-ounce kind of jars or cans/jars of tomato for the 4.5 pounds of beef. There we go. I'll give it a stir and let it sit for about a half hour, slowly simmering. Forgot to add a little bit of Dijon mustard. I like to do that, about half a tablespoon of Dijon mustard into this one, and about a little bit less into the smaller batch. Dijon will give it a little bit of a bitterness, a nice bitterness. Here's the most important part. We're almost done now. We've let this simmer for a very long time. Now we have to taste for sweet, salt, sour, spicy, and make the adjustment and go through that a number of times until we feel it's absolutely perfect. It's better to have a couple of people doing this so that you get a couple of different opinions. Now if you're nervous about this, the thing to do is just do small adjustments, stir it up, and see if you think it's better or worse, okay? So I'm going to give this a try and we'll see how it is. Okay, this first batch here, I think personally needs to be a little bit saltier and a little bit sweeter. So I'm going to make those adjustments now. So I'll do, well, I guess about a teaspoon of salt, and I'll do 3 tablespoons of sugar, and I'll stir it up and see if I think I made it better or worse. And then I'll just keep doing that until it's absolutely perfect. So let's give it a second try. Oh yeah, I think that's way better. It's got way more body to it. So I think that's pretty well there. The last thing is, and this is always necessary at the very end, I like giving the chili a really good couple lugs of olive oil, and it really gives the chili a nice sort of glassy finish to it. You can even pour the olive oil, I'm going to even give that a little bit more. You can even pour the olive oil right on the chili in the bowl, and you'll see it makes an amazing difference. And of course at the end here, you can use a better olive oil, and the better the olive oil, the better the taste. And this is just going to be, you see how that's a shiny kind of glassy finish on the top of this chili, and it's going to be just amazing when you pour that in the bowl. So here's an amazing chili for you folks. You can make this chili your way. You can put beans in it, more peppers, less peppers, hot, sweet, whatever you like. Don't forget to put a lot of olive oil. It makes it fabulous and really brings out all the flavors. So I hope you make it and let me know if you like it. Enjoy!